Welcome to Flunking the Written, a fully spoiled Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast in which two Uber fans break down every episode of the show. Join Kimberly and Megan every other Tuesday as they overanalyze each scene and discuss the Buffyverse at large. Now let's meet up with the Scoobies and get into this episode of Flunking the Written.
What can I say? I flunked the written.
Alright, Kim, we're going to get into our discussion of Go Fish, which was written by David Fury and Ellen Hampton, directed by David Simmel, and the blurb is, Xander goes undercover on the Sunnydale swim team after members begin turning up dead after apparently being skinned alive.
Well, mostly accurate.
I especially appreciate the after members begin turning up dead after apparently being skinned alive. It's like the after apparently being skinned alive is just like a tacked on tidbit.
Yeah. They're not actually dead, though.
Yeah. We start at a beach party, which is the first confusion. There is a song here. It's Man's Chinese by Naked. And this is apparently the victory party for the swim team. So, surprise, Sunnydale has a swim team.
Yes, and also is on a beach, but not a tourist town. So, okay.
Xander, Cordelia, and Willow are standing at like a fire, and Xander is nippy, or at least his nips are.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's just there complaining about the swim team not being a real team, and blah this and blah that. Cordelia is actually of the opinion that it's exciting that at least one of the sports team has excelled at something. So I guess confirmation that Sunnydale students are bad at sports, which I guess makes sense because they're probably not alive long enough to get good.
Yeah, true. I want to just point out the awesomely cool girl behind them during this conversation when it kind of leaves.
I didn't notice her.
Willow and Xander and Cordelia and kind of moves over to where Buffy is. There's a group in a circle around, I guess, a barrel or something or another bonfire or whatever. And they're all standing there still except this one girl who is wearing a skirt down to her ankles and a giant sweater and dancing like crazy. And everyone else in the circle with her is standing still, but she is going to town.
She's having a good time.
She's just awesome. She's having fun. She does not care. And I just want to point that out because, like, I love to see her whenever I watch this episode.
I have never noticed her.
Yeah.
And I'll be frank. I feel like this is not a big surprise to anybody, but this is one of my least favorite episodes of Buffy. So little nuggets like that, I guess we'll find delight in. But
she's easy to notice because she's wearing like a cream colored skirt, and everyone else is wearing dark clothes.
Never even noticed her. I was too busy scratching my head, being like, "Why are these people here? Like, did Cordelia just drag Xander and Willow and Buffy to this beach party? Because she's the only one that even kind of makes sense to be at this."
Yes, and again, we've had a lot of Buffy off by herself at the beginning of episodes lately. And I know they're plot devices, but like, why is she all alone? She has friends. She has Willow and Xander.
Well, that's so funny because my next note is, it pans over to Buffy. Cue sad music as she stares at the ocean.
Yeah, all alone when her friends are literally behind her.
Aw, poor Buffy. She's all isolated with no one who understands her. Except for this guy. Yeah. He comes to hit on her because apparently guys only hit on Buffy when she's single, alone. Even though she was in a relationship that wasn't public knowledge. But that's okay. I call this guy Owen 2.0. He just started talking about the ocean. He's so very deep in his way of expressing his emotions when it comes to the ocean.
It's just so
eternal. A true mother giving birth to new life and devouring old. Always adaptable and nurturing, yet constant and merciless.
Boy, I was just going to go with big and wet.
They kind of flirt a little bit, and he makes it known that he likes her, and she's like, oh, whoa, wait. And then he says, no pressure. We'll just hang out together, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that happens. And then we hear shouts and people laughing and making fun of somebody. And our friend Jonathan is getting bullied by other members of the swim team. He's being, I think I'm gonna go with this is a little bit more than bullying. He's being attempted murdered by members of the swim team. They're holding his head in a thing of ice water, telling him he has to hold his breath to be a member of the swim team.
Mm-hmm.
And he cries out for help. Somebody help me. And I point that out because if something's going to happen in a minute. He literally says, someone help me, please. Okay.
He's a very conflicted character. He's very conflicted.
Yes. Buffy is over there and she grabs the guy who's, you know, trying to murder Jonathan's arm and notices that there is a cigar smoking shark tattoo on it. And then kind of knocks him down. He says, what's your problem? And Cameron kind of tells him, well, you had it coming, and takes up for Buffy a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then another guy on the swim team, him and Dodd decide to go for a walk to calm down.
Yes.
And
Wentworth Miller playing Gage. I never once referred to him as Gage in any of my notes. It is Wentworth. And I am so upset that they got Wentworth Miller in an episode of Buffy, and it's this episode of Buffy because I love him so much.
Wentworth is a better name for that character than Gage. I don't know who he is other than Buffy, so you're going to have to share that with me.
He was the star of Prison Break, and then he's also in Legends of Tomorrow. He's also just like a really cool, like open about his mental health and the nature of being in the industry and the back and forth that you feel and stuff like that. So yeah, he's been a very open and cool dude about that aspect of it. And I love him a lot. And I wish he was in a better episode of Buffy than this.
He's kind of a douche in this show though.
Oh yeah.
This is my only reference for him. So Buffy grabs Jonathan a towel. And he gets mad at her and says, why didn't you mind your own business? I didn't need your help. And I'm going to point out that he literally yelled, somebody help me, please. It did not specify he did not want it to be Buffy.
Well, wouldn't that have been funny? Someone help me. Somebody who's male and bigger than me so I don't feel emasculated, please. That would be my preference.
Yeah. So then we cut to Dodd and Gage walking down the beach. Wentworth. Walking down the beach. And Dodd mentions that Buffy gives him the creeps. And then Gage says that he smells something bad.
His exact words are, "Aw, dude, what is that foulness?" Which is my favorite line.
It's a pretty good one. And then he realizes Dodd is not there. And so instead of wondering where his friend went, who he was literally talking to 3 seconds before, he just kind of keeps walking to another group of kids.
Yeah. Looks for his friend for 5 seconds and then shrugs and is like, I'll just go swim.
Yeah. Then the camera pans back like 5 feet to right where he just was. Mm-hmm. We hear a scream that literally no one else hears. And then a wet, squishy sound. And a sea monster starts walking into a sewer pipe.
Do we see that?
Which is right there on the beach.
Do we see that in the episode? Did I completely miss that? Did I watch this episode? I thought it just panned over to his skin. I didn't realize we ever saw the sea monster at this early.
Yeah, we did. And I remember we did because in the script book, it says that he walks toward the sea and like gets into the ocean. And I remember thinking that's weird because they actually, kind of live beneath a school.
Uh-huh.
So I was paying attention to see if he did, and he actually walks back to the giant pipe, which is funny. Just there open for anyone to walk into and also opens into the ocean.
Yeah.
So seems like a weird setup. Yeah.
I have lots of questions about Sunnydale's sewer and like underground infrastructure that they have throughout this episode.
Yeah. Well, and then we see skin with a cigar smoking shark tattoo on it. So now we know that this is Dodd, and he has become a sea monster or either been eaten by a sea monster. We don't know which one yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I literally just remembered the panning over to see the skin on the ground. I must have been taking notes. I don't know. I only kind of watched this episode.
Yeah, it's not the best. It's definitely filler.
So after the credits, we come back and Willow is still teaching the class.
For some reason. And we still don't know if she's getting paid or like, medical and dental benefits.
Yeah, and she's walking around. She's very impressed with everyone's pie charts. They all have really good pie charts, except for Wentworth, who is playing solitaire with what Willow's idea of a naked lady is, which is definitely a clothed lady. Sweet baby Willow. And then we have this awful scene, which is like, okay, so here's my problem with this episode. It tries to do way too much. It has like 3 or 4 different things that it's trying to like give a lesson on, right? And this is like the first big one, which is this idea of after the class is dismissed, Snyder congratulates Wentworth and continues to like apparently approve Willow for subbing the class, but then tries to manipulate her into changing his grade because he's a swim team star and he needs to have at least a D to continue to be a swim team star, even though all he does in class is play solitaire.
Although I think like every high school in America, you have to have a C average to play sports, but that's just me. I think this is probably
Sunnydale's standards
inaccurate.
are low.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, so they have this storyline that really doesn't go anywhere, but it's just like that, I guess that elitism that comes with jocks and the sports team members, and you have like a little bit of that continue throughout with Xander complaining about it, but
yeah,
it's just there. It's just one of those
really
things that's there.
Lesson.
There's no lesson. There's no point to it being there other than to.
And I'm kind of surprised that the swim team gets this, because like most of the time schools do this because the jocks and the sports teams are what they get money from like ticket sales and merchandise and stuff. But no matter how good they are, there's not a whole lot of people in town gonna go to a swim meet. I'm sorry, they're just not. Unless it's like, Olympic quality swim meet. And then you might have some people go, but it's never going to be like football or basketball or baseball. So I don't understand why they're like the gold standard in the school, because it's not really getting them things like the football team would, Doesn't really make sense. But they are apparently the new stars of Sunnydale.
Yeah. Well, and it's also weird because I feel like we've kind of framed Sunnydale for having an exceptionally good cheer team.
Mm-hmm.
And Cordelia even talks about, like, how she's excited that she gets to cheer for actual winners and, not wasting all of her enthusiasm on all of the losers. So apparently it's a like, what were those movies called? A Bring It On setup where the cheer team's exceptional and all of the other teams are just garbage. But, like...
I enjoyed those movies.
Why... I've never heard of a cheer team cheering on a swim team either.
Yeah. Like cheerleaders at swim team meets.
Like, what is their cheer?
Yeah. You make a very good point. I never considered that, but you make a very good point.
Anyway, after Snyder threatens Willow on a thing that she's doing for the school as a favor.
Yeah.
Be like, we want you to continue to do this, but also change his grade. I am the ultimate authority, and you have no way out of this. And I'm just like, she could just leave, but whatever. It cuts to the hall, and Xander and Willow and Cordelia are kind of talking about what just happened.
Okay.
Willow's...
So I'm going to point out here what I usually point out about Buffy, that we now have Cordelia, who is dressed for a completely different season than the other characters. Is we have Willow and Xander, who are both wearing long pants and long sleeves, and Xander's actually wearing an extra shirt, so like they're both ready for the first snow. And Cordelia is in a sleeveless top and a mini skirt, so she is ready for the club. That's overheated, and so I'll just point that out. They're now doing it with Cordelia and Buffy.
Xander is just still nippy from the night before.
Yeah, apparently.
Which is funny because when you think about the timeline of this, what would this be like? April-ish?
The next day? Oh,
like
yeah.
April-ish in the year. Mm-hmm. It would be kind of towards the end of the school year. So yeah, maybe Cordelia's dressing appropriately and Xander's just incredibly cold-natured.
And so is Willow.
Willow's just always covered up.
Yeah, sure. Okay. You go ahead. I just wanted to point that out because I'm the one that it always bothers me.
I understand. We all have our things.
It's always so noticeable to me when characters that are together in something are dressed for different seasons. And it drives me insane. I'm like, what? Who thought up these wardrobe choices? You look like it's July and you look like it's December. It always pulls me out of the show. And it happens a lot in Buffy. So I'm just going to mention it every time. Because it's one of my little pet peeves in the show.
Anyway, Willow had just explained what happened with Snyder. Xander is very offended.
It's a slap in the face to every one of us who studied hard and worked long hours to earn our Ds.
And this is where Cordelia talks about how certain people are just entitled to special privileges. And then we have this little back and forth, which I find quite amusing, and I'll probably just put in the sound clip for. But it's just, again, another sign that, like, Cordelia's got a counter for everything.
And she knows some history.
Uh-huh.
At least a little bit.
And what about that nutty all men are created equal thing?
Propaganda spouted out by the ugly and less deserving.
I think that was Lincoln.
Disgusting mole and stupid hat.
Actually, it was Jefferson.
Kept slaves, remember?
Okay, and then Xander makes a comment that I just drives me insane. He says, you know what really grates my nerves? Buffy's not here to share my moral outrage about swim team perks. She's too busy being one of them. And I was like, wow, Xander, that is, okay, first of all, completely undeserved. Like, we don't know that Buffy's doing anything of the kind. And also, wow, so catty. Like, yes, I just described Xander as catty. That was catty.
Yeah. And also, like, what is this, the next day? Like, it's not, I'm really confused.
And it's just kind of mean. It's like really mean for Xander to say about Buffy.
Yeah.
And because like she's not even dating him, so it's undeserved as well. It's not like they're passing her around.
It's just it's again, I feel like they're trying to do this storyline of the privilege of, you know, jocks in high school, and they're doing it with the swim team, which is weird, but then they're also doing it too fast, like you said, and it doesn't flow right. We don't have enough time to see a relationship develop between Buffy and Cameron to make Xander actually feel this way, because literally they had the one scene on the beach and then the next scene he tries to assault her, so we're not like we're just like, wow, yeah, she's
so the next scene is Cameron and Buffy in his car, and they're pulling into the parking lot of the school, which I guess they're late because Willow's already had at least one class that she taught. So they're coming to school late. And Cameron is waxing about the ocean and the vastness of it and the English
Owen
Channel
2.0.
Whoa. Just like, really. And you can tell Buffy is over it. She's like, yeah, no, this isn't going to happen. And she basically is trying to go. She's like, yeah, thanks again. I'm going to, leave. Thanks for talking to me. And Cameron's like, I'm not about pressure. I want you comfortable. Are you wearing a bra? And she's immediate like, what? And I'm like, okay, so what kind of line is this? Like, did he consider this to be like a smooth opening or something? Are you wearing a bra? Like,
no.
The night before he was trying, he was like flirting and being kind and, caring about her and stuff. And now he's just like, are you wearing a bra?
Yeah.
And it's just a complete change in personality. Kind of.
Yeah, it's the second storyline that they're playing with, the second theme that they're playing with that really they don't spend enough time on to develop or to like do anything with. It's just a situation where Buffy put out a message a certain way, and sometimes teenage boys don't always, think with their brains and hear what the girl's saying. But again, like, it's so fast, and it is like 5 seconds after saying, hey, I want you to be comfortable, immediately is just like, are you wearing a bra? And I don't even know. It's just so much. Why are what all are they trying to explore in this episode? Because none of it's explored to a level that I feel like it's actually properly explored.
Yeah, it's like they start a bunch of different issues, but they don't really finish any of them. Yeah, so then he tells her, hey, I'm not going to hurt you. And she tries to get out of the car and he locks her in. So I guess we could far reach and call that kidnapping. And he says, I'm not going to hurt.
In full daylight in the school parking lot on a school day. But yeah. He's not the smartest.
He says, I'm not going to hurt you. And she's like, I'm not worried about me. So he tries to grab her. The script book says that he gropes her, but I don't think we actually have that happen in the show. He just kind of tries to grab her.
She doesn't give him the chance. That was probably a situation where Sarah was just like, no.
Yeah. But here's my thing. He locks her in the car and tries to grope her. Like, what does he think is about to happen in his car in broad daylight during the school day?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what? This is where he chooses to make his move? Like, what does he think is fixing to happen here? There's literally people who can see them, as we immediately find out when she slams his head into the steering wheel and then looks up and Snyder is staring at them both. You know, so like, did he think something was going to happen there and like everybody was just going to ignore it? It's a weird place to make a move, I think.
Especially considering the night before they were on a beach at night.
Right.
I say the night before. It feels like it was the night before. Theoretically, there could have been some time that has passed. But at this point, I just suspect that Cameron went from the beach one night to, hey, I'll give you a ride to school tomorrow. And then this is the immediate turn from him. He has no chill.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're in the nurse's office. And the nurse is putting a ice pack on his nose and saying it's not actually broken. And he's saying, I was attacked. And basically, they do a big Buffy asked for it. I'm a big jock. I can do what I want type thing. Yeah.
Which fits into the two storylines that they've already established, right? The privileged jock and the double standard when it comes to the way that girls dress in high school versus the way that guys dress in high school and blah this, blah that. Because later on, we see that, like, the swim team that they're all praised. I mean, they're in these Speedos. I mean... And yet Buffy in her slightly short skirts are way too provocative. So, like, again, it's one of those, they tease at all of these different issues, but they do nothing with any of it.
Yeah. Like, yeah, none of it actually goes anywhere.
But yeah, this is our first little tease at what's actually going on, because the coach is talking about how they need Cameron at 110% because he's the best swimmer now with Dodd. And then Buffy Owl's like, what happened to Dodd? What's going on with Dodd? And Snyder says, none of your concern, when they're talking openly about it right in front of her.
Right.
just a whole lot of put women in their place in this scene.
Oh yeah.
So can I complain about this next bit? Because I want to complain about this next bit.
Go for it.
So we cut to the library, and Buffy is presumably finishing up telling the story about everything that she just experienced. And, you know, you assume that includes the parts where she was physically assaulted and, and everything there, right? And then she pauses, and everyone looks up from their books as if annoyed with her just nonstop, incessant rambling. And so Buffy corrects herself and says, so anything new with you guys? And Giles says, thank you for taking an interest. And I am so mad at Giles.
Yeah, it's really, yeah. Like, what? That always slightly annoys me, too. I'm like, why are y'all annoyed with her? Like, it's not like she's been dating this guy and ignored y'all for weeks. This literally happened last night and then this morning, you know?
Yeah, and I think you can trace that because in this scene, they talk about Dodd being found on the beach and nothing but skin and cartilage and all that stuff. So clearly all of this is fresh because they would have researched that as soon as they heard. So, It's like there's like a weird time that existed in between, even though there was no time that existed in between, where all of the Scoobies got really irritated with each other, or mostly all of the Scoobies got really irritated with Buffy, because she decided she was going to go and be with the swim team and give up on all of her friends. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, Giles is talking about Dodd and what has happened, and everybody's kind of concerned. Buffy's talking about how someone opened him up and ripped out his insides, and Willow makes a inappropriate joke, which I find quite amusing, about it's kind of like an Oreo cookie.
Yeah, and everybody kind of stares at her.
There's a lot of like just joking about horrific things in this episode that kind of makes sense because this is these people's day-to-day lives, so you gotta find the humor in it, otherwise you will lose yourself completely. But also, wow. So Giles apparently heard this through the faculty, who were told to
no
keep
one's
it
supposed
quiet.
to know yet.
Yeah, who's told to keep it quiet. I don't like. Again, who discovered the body? How did this all come about? No idea. But we'll accept that at face value. And Buffy has the line again, leading up to another joke that it doesn't make any sense. And Xander's like, "Yeah, the skin's the best part." And Buffy's like, "Any demons with high cholesterol?" And I enjoy this bit so much where Giles just glares at her, and Buffy's like, "You're going to think about that later, mister, and you're going to laugh." Mostly I enjoy that line because of the ways that it has been used to meme certain things in Buffy. It's a very good line to tack on to any joke. So after that, we cut to the steam room, which apparently is something that Sunnydale also has.
Yeah. Odd.
I feel like if this was something that Sunnydale High had access to, we would have known about it by now. I just wonder, like, if it was just they were so desperate to have a winning team that the second that they started to have a semi-decent swim team and the coach requested a steam room, they were like, absolutely, whatever you want.
Yeah, we just put this in.
They take it out immediately after. Cameron is in there trying to relax, and then you have this weird prolonged section with lots of suspense and dramatic music. And then the coach barges in and says that he's had enough and needs to hit the shower. And that's that scene.
Yep. Then we are in the like little center area of the school, and Xander comes in with change. Looks like he's going toward a vending machine and kind of runs into Cameron, who we assume has just left the steam room and gotten dressed again and everything. Loser, and Xander kind of like, "I like your nose, Cam. Good look for you. I love it when you mess with Buffy." Or I love it when you guys mess with Buffy, which I like it when Xander says that.
I don't like that.
You don't? Why not?
I don't know, like, I understand what his intent is. I just don't like the line. I'm just like, oh, yeah, mess with Buffy. That's like, you shouldn't like when people mess with Buffy. Anyway.
Well, I think he likes the result.
Yeah, I think he likes the end result. But I would still rather Buffy not be assaulted and having to break a guy's nose. I would like that be the
I didn't really see it that way, that he was yeah. Cameron, in the script book it says that he considers attacking Xander. I don't really get that impression from the episode though. It looks like he just kind of looks at him.
Yeah.
And then he says, "You're lucky I'm hungry," and goes to the cafeteria, and Xander's like, "It's closed." And Cameron's like, "Not to me, because what, cafeteria food at any time of the night is a perk of some kind?"
I just put weird brag.
Yeah, like this really weird flex there. And then Cameron walks into the cafeteria, and you can tell he smells something really nasty. And then we cut back to Xander, who is at the soda machine trying to decide between grape or orange.
Yeah, it's a tough debate. Let's backstep just for a second.
Okay.
Because this is the first time I've had a wide shot that I felt like I could do this. But you see the entire cafeteria when Cameron walks into it. Wall to wall, you see it. And if you count... No snakes anymore. If you count the chairs, there is a whopping 32 seats.
Did you count them?
Well, I mean, I counted how many was around one table and then counted the tables and multiply it. But there are 32 seats in this cafeteria and this school that sports its own swimming pool and steam room.
Well, maybe they all have lunch at different times. Staggered lunches.
It takes like 4 hours to get through lunch.
It took longer than that, I think.
So while Xander's debating, he hears a scream and runs to the cafeteria, and he finds Cameron's skin.
And turns around to see a sea monster.
Dun dun dun.
And screams.
So don't worry, Xander gets away through the power of commercial break.
Yes. Because when we come back from the commercial break, he's in the library. He is kind of in a panic, all like hyped up, trying to describe the sea monster to Cordelia, who is attempting to draw it. And he says its mouth is bigger with more teeth. And she's like, "Okay, I'm doing my best." And here's the description. in the script book of the sea monster, which they call a gill monster. It says an approximate rendering of the gill monster with many differences, including a too big mouth with too many teeth.
Yeah.
I just think that's funny. They kind of tried to figure out if this is what Xander saw and then make fun of him a little bit for running and screaming and not getting a good look at it. And then they decide that, Dodd and Cameron were the best swimmers on the team, so Gage is going to be next.
Yeah. Willow and Buffy come in to confirm something that Buffy already knows because she was in the nurse's office earlier when they were discussing the fact that was were the first and second best swimmers.
And then they decide that somebody is doing it for revenge and that it might be Jonathan. And so Willow is going to interrogate Jonathan and Buffy is going to keep an eye on Gage, which I'm going to just point out she is amazingly good at.
Yes. I think she's missed her calling.
She is the least stealthy person on Earth in this episode. Somebody apparently told Buffy that when you want to keep an eye on someone, you basically stare directly at them at all times.
Yes. That's the only way. Otherwise, they could slip away and you wouldn't know.
Yeah, so we have several scenes in the quad and at the bronze later where Buffy is just kind of staring at Gage, who notices her and looks at her, and then she quickly looks away and starts staring at him again, because that is how you stealthily follow someone. And then Willow goes to interrogate Jonathan about the swim team and how he tried out a bunch of times and never made it.
I'm asthmatic. I couldn't keep up.
You resented it, didn't you?
Maybe.
You hated being pushed around by Dodd and the others.
So?
So you wanted revenge, didn't you? Didn't you?
Yeah, okay. I did.
So, you delved into the black arts and conjured up a hell beast from the ocean's depths to wreak your vengeance. Didn't you?
What? No. I snuck in yesterday and peed in the pool.
Ew.
I actually wrote in my notes for this scene, did Willow, inadvertently plant the seed for Jonathan's dark magic addiction later on?
I thought that too.
He was just like, I didn't even realize that was an option.
Yeah. He's like, can I do that? What are these black arts of which you speak? Let me look into this. And then we have evil Jonathan.
Yes.
I thought that too when I saw it. Then the next scene, we have Principal Snyder and the coach walking together, talking about what a blow it is to the team that they lost 2 swimmers. And Snyder's like, look, can you still do it? And he's like, I don't have a full team. We got to find somebody at tryouts. And then they walk out of camera range and we see Xander, who was listening. And then we're at the bronze where, like I mentioned earlier, Buffy is being stealthy, watching Gage, who decides to confront her because this has been going on all day, and is like, what do you want from me? And she tries to go with the story that she's a swim team groupie and gets turned on by the smell of chlorine on a guy, and he doesn't buy it. She decides to tell him basically, there's something killing people on the swim team, and I think you're going to be next. And he tells her she's crazy and go harass someone else and leaves. And at this point, Buffy just decides not to protect him anymore.
Yeah.
Like, she's not going to follow him now.
I guess she's over it at this point. I don't know. Okay, so before we get to the next awful scene, there is a song playing here at the Bronze. It's If You'd Listen by Nero's Rome, and this is a band that I immediately was into as soon as I really listened to this song, because they're like my flavor of grungy, almost like a vocalist who's not afraid to really screech and do terrible things to his vocal cords in order to convey emotion, which is what I'm so into. It's very not auto-tune. And I really liked the sound, and I actually listened to some more of their stuff. So I wanted to give that a shout out. And also I just find that Wentworth's performance in the stocking sections are really delightful. Like the way he acts around Buffy of just like, you gotta be kidding me kind of acting that he does. Particularly the little look that he gives her earlier on at the school where he's just staring at her blankly because she's so not subtle.
Mm-hmm.
I just love it. It's great. But yeah, he leaves and Buffy does not follow. And then Angel shows up to make his weekly I'm still here visit. And says you gotta be talking about Buffy when Wentworth is just whispering psycho bitch. Because it's gotta be Buffy. I mean. And yeah. So Angel says this line that she and I had this thing once, and then he says, biggest mistake of my life. This is a line I could unpack for hours.
Yeah.
Because when you really think of it, Angelus wouldn't be here without that thing. That thing he had once with Buffy, turns out, is why he's Angelus again. From Angelus's point of view, the killing the gypsy girl makes sense as, like, the biggest mistake, because it's just like, that's how I got my soul back. But, like, his relationship with Buffy is how he lost his soul again. And Angelus likes to be unsouled, right? Like, that's his jam. He wants to be an evil killing machine. That's what he wants to do with his life. So how is it that is the biggest mistake of his life? He would look at that favorably, I think.
Yeah, I guess so. But he's also trying to make nice with this guy.
Yeah, it's such a throwaway line, but it's one of those that are just like, oh, that's a choice that I like want to analyze further than what actually deserves. It's not, there's no thought put into that line by any of the writers, but for me, I'm just like, ooh, that's a good line that I want to unpack and really like analyze Angelus over, and it's in this awful episode, and I know it means nothing, and I'm just like, I'm not going to waste my time on it. But I wrote it down in my notes that I could definitely, if I wanted to, unpack that line for hours, because it is one that makes you kind of scratch your head again. But yeah, Angel is there. He's trying to like kind of go Wentworth on. Again, I refuse to call him Gage, I guess. And as they're doing their back and forth and complaining about Buffy, Angel's like, who is she? The chosen one? And Wentworth's like, exactly.
Oh yeah, it's great.
I love it. So then he says someone really needs to knock her down off her notches, which I spent a long time on this line. It was just like, is this like a weird mixed metaphor? Because I've heard of like knock her down a notch, and I've heard of like knock her off her pedestal, but knock her down off her notches, I have never heard of. And I Googled and Googled.
I didn't notice that it said that.
He says, knock her down off her notches. And I'm just like, I think you got mixed up there, Angel.
Yeah.
That all leads into him going to bite Wentworth, just as Buffy conveniently decides to take her leave of the bronze. But she takes her sweet time to respond to someone shouting for help.
Yeah,
like screaming for help.
Processes it for a minute before she runs toward the screaming person.
But Wentworth does actually call for Buffy specifically, which I thought was a nice touch. And as Buffy approaches, we see Angel throw Wentworth down and starts to spit out the blood. And Buffy pulls out her, like, hair stick thing and holds it up as if to stake him. But I'm pretty sure it's plastic.
Nope, it says in the script that they're wooden. I mean, it might actually be plastic, but it's supposed to be wood. I think it was plastic
in the show.
Yeah, it's supposed to be wood.
This was one of the few episodes that I've ever watched with, like, the remastered high definition stuff, because I ended up watching it on Amazon Prime, because I was on a different computer, and that was where I could watch it. And it looks awfully plastic.
Well, it says in the script book that they are actual stakes, that she had them hidden in her hair.
Oh.
Like,
that's what it was.
Yeah. So those were, they weren't just wooden, like, hair decorations. They were actual stakes.
They were actual stakes that she had placed up there. That's nice. Yeah. I like a girl that can accessorize with her murder weapons.
Yeah, that works out. And then he kind of pushes Gage into her and runs off, still spitting the blood, like a bad taste in his mouth. And Gage is like, is that what's killing people? And Buffy's like, nope, something else. And he's like, something else? And she's like, yeah, we got a lot of something else's. And she starts to walk off because, again, apparently she is not going to protect him anymore. And then he asks her to walk him home. And so she does. But, like, I guess now that he knows she's watching, she doesn't have to protect him.
Maybe in her mind, she's like, I told him exactly what was going to happen, and he didn't believe me, so he's not worth my time anymore. I just want to say that everything about Angel in this scene is just a force, like we have to have Angel in this episode to show that he's still a threat or whatever, just to show him, because we're paying him anyway. He has to be in a scene, I guess. But, like, the way in which he, like, throws him at her and then just casually walks away. And Buffy is just like, aw shucks, he's walking away at an easy pace. Guess I can't kill him.
Yeah.
It's not like one of those things where he looks back up and then he's suddenly gone. I could have bought that, but he literally just turns around and walks away so casually. Aw shucks. So the next scene is swim practice. It is very obviously swim practice, yet there is a very large crowd, mostly girls, watching swim practice. And also, Buffy and Willow are enjoying popcorn, so I guess there's concessions at this swim practice.
Which is weird.
You said that, swimming's never going to attract the crowds that football would. But if every practice becomes an event that you can sell concessions at, maybe, just maybe, it is worth their time.
Possibly, yeah. So they're hanging out, sitting on the bleachers, watching the practice. And discussing about how Angel didn't like the blood because there was probably something in it, and maybe the swim team's on steroids. And that's how they got so good.
Another issue that they decided to bring up.
Yeah, high school drug abuse. And then Cordelia sees somebody she thinks is hot come in and starts from the feet up looking at him. And it's like, oh my. That's my kind of. And then she realizes it's Xander in a Speedo because he is pretending. She thinks he's pretending to be a member of the swim team.
Yeah.
And Willow goes, Xander! In the script book, it says he tries to cover himself with his hands, but he grabs like a floaty type thing in the episode. Mm-hmm. And I love Buffy's reaction to this. Like when he comes over there, Willow is all like, I don't know where to look. Oh my God. And Cordelia's like, oh my God, my boyfriend's hot. But Buffy is just grinning at him. Mm-hmm. And he says, I'm undercover. And she goes, not under much. And it's just, the look on her face is just hilarious. So he talks about how he's going to keep an eye on Gage and the others when Buffy can't. And then the coach yells at him that he can flirt on his own time. And he leaves. And Cordelia's like, oh, I'm dating a swimmer on the swim team. Like she's not dated jocks before.
Yeah.
And then Buffy asks Willow about Jonathan. Was he involved? And she's like, no, he peed in the pool. And at this point, Xander jumps into the pool. He attempts to dive into the pool, but it's more like a belly flop.
Yeah. He has quite the flourish when he jumps. So I'm gonna backtrack a little bit because I've complained a lot about this episode. But there is a moment in this scene that just delights me to no end. But when they're talking about the possibility of steroids or something being in their blood, Willow suggests that maybe what's in their blood is attracting the creature to them. They're having all of this conversation about, the actual investigation side of it. And Cordy chimes in saying that they haven't found anything from Xander's description. And I'm just like, can we just appreciate how much of a Scooby Cordelia is? Like, Cordelia has been hitting the books with Giles this entire time looking for this thing. That's awesome.
Yep.
I just thought I'd throw that out there because I really liked that. That made me happy. So from there, we're back at the steam room. Then Xander's talking about how steam rooms are weird, which I feel like, I have no desire to be in a steam room ever, especially not with like a lot of other people. So I can agree with that.
Is it the same as a sauna? It's the same as a sauna, right?
Yeah, I guess.
I've been in one. I wasn't impressed.
And we get this little like pan down and a fishman opens the grate outside. Outside the locker room, Buffy is pacing and Xander comes out and tags Buffy in, saying Wentworth was, just behind him. And then we cut into the locker room and Wentworth smells the foulness again. Top quality acting, stands up and kind of like sniffs and sniffs and sniffs. as he walks around. And then he eventually screams, which Buffy hears, and she runs in to see the fishman that apparently came in through the grate and just like chilled out for a while everybody got out of the steam room and got dressed and left. He's just hanging out in the corner. And then she pushes Wentworth back, and he starts to scream. So Buffy just turns her back on the fish monster to focus on him for a bit, just leaving herself completely exposed to this obvious monster. And he starts ripping his skin off and stands up, and now we have 2 fish boys. So I have a note here that Buffy's caught between them, and this is the first time that we see them be aggressive at all.
Yeah, instead of just wandering away.
Yeah, but they are immediately aggressive towards Buffy. Buffy gets bit, and the coach saves her. Good guy coach.
Oh yeah, good guy coach, who is a very good actor in this next scene. Because he is devastated that this could have been happening to his boys, and he worked so hard. And he thought he was inspiring the boys to greatness, but instead they were taking steroids behind his back.
I just wrote this like, this is the weirdest scene ever. Like, it kind of makes sense played as the steroids, but you're talking about 2 of your swimmers turn into fish monsters.
Yeah.
And it's played with such a straight face.
I've never seen any kind of pharmaceutical prescribed or like illegal that has that as a side effect. But apparently that's a normal thing in Sunnydale.
Yeah, I was just so afraid to admit to myself that my boys could be taking something that would turn them into like fish monsters. I mean, I was so afraid to admit to myself that.
Yeah, and like Buffy, or not Buffy, but the nurse knows about this. The nurse is like part of this conversation. She doesn't really talk, but she's there.
Uh-huh.
So like she's accepted this too. As a medical professional, she's also accepted that these steroids have turned these kids into gill monsters, and tells Buffy that she does not need stitches for the bite, but she should probably have her regular doctor look at it. I'm like, what are you going to tell your regular doctor, that you were bit by a giant fish? Really? Although it's a doctor in Sunnydale, so it probably won't be a big deal.
Yeah. They're like, okay, you can go to the fish line.
Yeah. Well, and after Coach Martin does his sad little thing about he thought it was him and he was just a good coach, Giles is like, you never asked them if they're taking anything? And he's like, maybe I was afraid to. And then he's like really good. He's playing it up. And then we cut to the computer room where they are looking at the medical records for the guys on the swim team. And it says that Dodd had a torn tendon and Gage had a fractured wrist and depression and headaches. And I'm like, these are really detailed school medical records. And then they talk about how the school nurse treated them for all this stuff. Like, I don't know. My school nurse, she like let you lay down on her cot if you had a headache. Like, she wasn't even allowed to give Tylenol.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking she's not treating you for depression. like even if she is a nurse practitioner and can do prescriptions, she's still not treating you for depression or torn tendon or stuff like that. She's, she takes temperatures and calls parents.
Yeah.
Like, she didn't do much else. So yeah, I don't know what this swim team has its own personal medical professional to treat them at school.
Yeah.
But they're discussing this and how the nurse had to know and why they would do this. And Buffy's like, because they need to win. And they start talking about how Xander needs to try to find out what the boys are taking and how they're taking it.
Mm-hmm.
And Giles is going to load up the tranquilizer gun, and Buffy and him are going fishing, which seems to be the most colossal waste of time of Buffy and Giles. They basically just wander through the sewers with a tranquilizer gun.
Yeah. My note is that this is just a long scene to show that the fish monsters are way better at stealth than Buffy could ever hope to be.
Yeah. Then we have Xander in the steam room again. The script book says it's the next day. He's in the steam room again, and he's talking and everyone's just being quiet. He very obviously starts asking loaded questions about steroids. He's like, when do we get our next dose? And who's carrying? I need something to improve my performance. He's very awkward about this. Then he's like, the steroids, where are they? And you're like, who asks it like that?
Mm-hmm.
Someone else tells him you're soaking in it. It's in the steam. It's aromatherapy. And Xander's like,
Yeah. It's weird, right? Like,
yeah,
you would think that this way of administering it was chosen because it's a way to have the swimmers do it without realizing that they're taking anything.
So
but apparently they know.
And are fine with it.
Yeah.
Like willing to sit in it. But they don't tell Xander. Like Xander does it without knowing. So that's kind of weird. And then we have the nurse and the coach having a discussion. And the nurse is like, you have to stop. They're turning into fish, man. You got to stop doing this. And he's like, no, we don't quit. We got to figure this out. I just think it's funny. He's like, this is too far. And apparently on giving children drugs, too far is when they actually turn into fish monsters for her. That is her too far point.
That's her. But that's her line.
Yeah, but not for the coach. That's not the coach's too far point. Not yet.
No, of course not.
And she says, you've lost 3. And the coach is like, they're not lost. And she's like, what? And then he shoves her through a grate in the floor that just immediately drops down into a sewer because this is the part of the school that doesn't have a basement, even though the entire rest of the school has a basement. And this would just open straight into the sewer from a grate in the floor.
Yeah. So this is like a water-filled sewer room, like a large room.
Yeah.
With hugely high ceilings that's well lit.
Okay. And so I'm going to point out that the nurse is in this sewer water. And then later Buffy gets dropped into this sewer water. I'm just kind of all the illnesses and bacteria and stuff that they're going to catch floating around in the sewer water. And again, this room, which is like the coach has a desk and stuff in. So it's his office and like a storage room for the swim team kind of put together. It's a grate in the floor that's open. So like the odors and stuff from this sewer just float up into his office all the time. Like it's really weird. But he pushes her down in it and she's like, what are you doing? And he says, I'm looking after my boys. We're still a team and they got to eat. And then she's sucked underwater and he calls her a quitter. So apparently the gill monsters eat people.
Yeah. Even though they had no interest in Xander earlier, but he had the power of the commercial break on his side.
That's true. The commercial break is very powerful. Xander is now in the library and is talking to Giles about the steam and is like, no, we need an antidote. What's the antidote? Clock is ticking. And Buffy's like, it's fine. You were only in there once. And he stares at her and she goes, twice? And then says 3 times. It's like, uh-oh. Although I'm guessing 3 times is not that much because you would think like the ones that turned into fish, they were the best swimmers on the team. So they were the ones that are the most.
Yeah.
And they were probably doing it like every day for months.
It seems like it.
Yeah. And then Cordelia is upset because she's going to be dating the creature from the Blue Lagoon. And he points out that that's Brooke Shields. Then Buffy starts talking about finding the rest of the swim team and locking them up, which they do. And I have some comments about that when we get there. And then Willow's going to go look for the nurse. And Buffy's going to go talk to the coach. So then the next scene is Buffy talking to the coach.
We don't get an interrogation scene with Willow and the nurse, unfortunately.
Because she's already been eaten. So.
Yeah, but Willow being a pro interrogator suddenly is quite enjoyable to me.
Yeah.
Buffy goes to the back room of the swim area and following the coach, shouting at him that he needs to go to jail. So I guess she's trusting her gut and has definitely decided that he's the guy. Strong way to say, hey, do you know anything about these? Like, we talked about it a little bit, but do you know anything about these steroids? No, she's like, no, you're going to jail, man. We figured this out.
And then she's like, just tell me what's in the steam. And he, oh my gosh, he says, this is after the fall of the Soviet Union, documents came to light detailing experiments with fish DNA on their Olympic swimmers, Tarpoon, Mako shark, but they never cracked it. And I did. And it's like these secret documents about experiments in the Soviet Union on people with DNA came to light. And a random swim coach at Sunnydale High School is the one that found them, right?
And like,
that's how this works.
Is using it so he can like have his team win state championship. And I'm just like, this coach is thinking small.
Yeah.
Like, he's figured out how to make fish monsters, and he's just like, but we gotta have that win.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Then he accuses Buffy of not having any school spirit because she says it's got to stop. And he raises a gun and makes her jump into the hole, which she jumps in and is now covered in sewer water.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I'm sorry, I can't get over how nasty that has to be. And he says, you think I don't care about them? They count on me. And Buffy's like, oh, you're going to feed me to them? And Coach says, oh, they've had their dinner, but boys have other needs. Which, yeah. So he's providing Buffy for the sexual gratification of fish monsters.
Yeah.
And like, it's funny because Nurse Greenlee's body floats by and it's just got like 3 holes in it. Like from like, it looks like she was stabbed. So they didn't eat her. I mean, they didn't. Like you would think, I'm just saying,
yeah.
They didn't eat her.
Yeah.
She's still there.
She's still there.
They apparently weren't hungry.
Yeah, let's just move on. We'll discuss more about the implications of what the leaving Buffy to be the object of sexual gratification for fish monsters in a minute. Let's go to Xander and Cordelia, who are at the pool looking for any loose team members as they're trying to round them all up and, you know, lock them away, isolate them from everyone else. Xander is rubbing his neck, feeling for scales, and is panicking again and again, and so he finally runs into the locker room to check. And a fish monster runs out and jumps in the pool. Mm-hmm. And then we have this very long, passionate speech from Cordelia talking about how Xander was so courageous and looked really hot in his Speedos. And it kind of ends with her saying that, you know, we could still date, but I understand if you want to see other fish. And I'll do everything I can to make your quality of life better. And, like, I don't know if this is supposed to be like, a tender moment that really shows that Cordelia would still, like, really love Xander and would still date him even if he's a fish monster. But I just, like, watch this scene, I'm just like, that's not how that would happen.
No, that's not how that would happen at all. She would not be buying him little bath toys.
It's just, it's unbelievable to the point that the second she starts saying, oh, it's me, Cordelia, and stuff like that, you're just like, yeah, that's not Xander. There's no way. So it's just there for the bit. And so since it's for a bit, you get to have Cordelia say a whole bunch of stuff that she would never say. Oh, but yeah, Xander's fine. He shows up and explains to Cordelia that that is in fact not him. And then the fishman jumps out to try to attack them, and they run. Then we have Giles and Willow who have somehow convinced the entire swim team to be locked in a book cage. So at this point, do we understand that the entire swim team understands that they could be a fish monster? If they just told them everything?
They get locked in this cage. If they do know that they can become fish monsters, they're being locked in a cage with someone who any second could turn into a fish monster, and they're okay with this.
They're like, this is fine.
Yeah, like, this is fine. We'll just stay here until this librarian decides to let us out. Like, okay. I think they would have had more trouble getting all the pool team or swim team members into the book cage.
But yeah, you're right. It's not even a good plan, because I had that same thought. I was just like, what if one of them turns into a fish monster and the rest don't? What happens to the rest? Because we've already established that they eat people.
So then they're talking about how, where's Buffy? And she hasn't come back yet. And we go back to Buffy, who is still in the water and has this line where she says, this is just what my reputation needs, that I did it with the entire swim team, which makes me laugh.
Yeah, I don't.
And what?
I
thought it was funny.
I don't like any of this. Yeah. Like, I don't get the point of any of it. That's the thing. I just put really with like 1,000,000 exclamation points after that line. As like, I get that Buffy quips in all scenarios and stuff like that, but you're literally showing a teenage girl trapped in a sewer being pursued by fish monsters that we understand want to rape her, and she's making quips about that. I just feel like it's so tone deaf as to what's actually being presented here. But that's not
That's
even
kind of been a theme this entire episode, though.
Yeah, that's the thing. This is the reason why I don't really enjoy this episode, is because I'm just watching and being like, oh god, no, this show's better than this. So yeah, Xander enters the back room, and the coach is just sitting there gleefully watching, which is Soup's creep.
Yeah, that is creepy.
I don't like that at all. And yeah, Buffy is fighting the fish monsters as Xander wrestles with the coach over a gun, the gun that he used to convince Buffy to jump down into the sewer with earlier. And yeah, Xander is able to elbow the coach, and he pulls Buffy out, and Buffy says thanks, and Xander has the quippy line of just doing my part for our team. And the coach knocks him out with a wrench. There's just so much. It's just like, bam, and then this happens, and then this happens. And there's a gun, and then there's a wrench. And Buffy trips him, and he ends up falling into the hole, very conveniently. She tries to catch him, but can't hold on, and she even reaches down to try to save him. And then the fish monsters attack him, and then we have the line, "Those boys really love their coach," from Buffy. Ooh. So we now understand that what was supposed to happen to Buffy has now happened to the coach. And again, ew. I don't really feel the need to dwell on any of that.
You think they were raping the coach?
Oh, yeah.
The script book says the sounds of eating and screaming stop her. So I understood it as they were eating the coach.
Well, the line, "Those boys really love their coach."
I never thought about it that way, but yeah, that could. Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Oh, no. Okay. So the next scene.
Yeah, I was about to say, we could just move on from that.
Is all the Scoobies sitting at a table, and Xander's complaining that he's got to make up chem test and then has to get plasma transfusions.
Mm-hmm. Busy afternoon.
Yeah, and that Giles seems confident that the plasma treatments will work to keep them from turning into fish. And Cordelia tells Xander, "You've really proven yourself to me, and you don't have to join the new team next year. You could play football instead." Then Giles comes up, which we haven't seen a whole lot of Giles in this episode, and says the people from Animal Control left because apparently the Sunnydale City Animal Control is qualified to handle fish monsters. Yeah. He didn't call the government or the military or the FBI or anything like that. Or
just let Buffy do her job.
Yeah, he called the local animal control to handle this. Which is just really, like, I'd be trying to get a hold of somebody in the government or like the CIA or something. Anyway, the local animal control says that they made a dash for it. And Buffy says she thinks they'll go home. And then we get a view of them swimming in the ocean, and there's 3 of them. But for the record, there were 4 gill monsters.
Yeah.
So one of them has hung out or hung around.
Yeah. Yeah, I made the same note. Yeah. I just also like, really, Buffy? You're just not even gonna kind of worry about the fact that there are fish monsters out there. She's just like, don't worry about it. It's fine.
Yeah, no biggie.
I mean, she did just like let Angelus walk away at a casual pace earlier in the episode too, so yeah. She's just over it. She's done.
Yeah, so overall, definitely not one of my favorite episodes. It is probably, Go Fish is probably in my bottom 5 episodes.
Oh, easily. I feel like it could be a contender for my least favorite episode. Like, it is that low. And it's real problematic because it's just wedged in there with like this set of episodes that happen between Passion and Becoming of like a whole bunch of stuff that we just don't care about, considering how like invested we are on the main through line of this season. But it also like takes away some of Angel's teeth, I think, because you have like these weird like goofy cameos that he has in this. And I'm just like, oh, I'd rather just have him not be in the episode than to have stuff like that. But then additionally, this episode's just particularly bad even for like a Monster of the Week type episode.
Oh, this episode is bad for everyone. Everyone's no bad
direction.
In this episode.
Like, it just has no direction at all. of what it's trying to get across. It just has like a bunch of ideas that somebody decided was a good idea to wedge all in one episode without fully exploring what any of them really are.
But that's true. But the good news is that 2 of the best episodes in all of Buffy are coming. They are the next 2.
Yeah, I'm glad to have this one out of the way. There's a few more episodes coming up later on in the series.
This is whenever I'm watching back through the series, this is one that I usually skip.
Yeah. I don't even remember the last time I watched this episode. But there's a few more episodes coming up in like season 4 that are ones like that I pretty much almost always skip. But this is probably the episode that's been the longest since I've seen it, just because I hate it that much.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're done with it. We don't have to talk about it anymore. Go Fish can cease to exist and it'd be great.
And next up, Becoming Part 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
And we will get to see Kendra again.
Hey, Kendra. How you doing, girl?
Yay.
We thank you all so much for listening. And this is where we say bye.
Bye.